Welcome back to Listen to the Helpers, a podcast created by the Fred Rogers Institute to elevate the voices of helpers everywhere. Fred Rogers once said, "When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, 'Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping.'" Today, we're joined by Mallory Mbalia, the Director of Learning and Education at Fred Rogers Productions. At the end of this episode, stay tuned as Kenzee and I reflect on our discussion with Mallory in the context of Fred Rogers' legacy and our own work at the Fred Rogers Institute. We are so excited to have Mallory Mbalia with us from Fred Rogers Productions for today's episode. So to start off, we'll just turn it right over to you, Mallory. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you are, and what you do?
It's so lovely to see you all, neighbors. My name's Mallory Mbalia, and I am the Director of Learning and Education at Fred Rogers Productions. My background is I started as a kindergarten teacher. I was in the classroom for many, many years, and also got the opportunity to be an elementary assistant principal. Also worked at my local station for a really long time as an outreach trainer, talking about educational media and PBS Kids content for many, many years, all through my teaching and my admin years, and then came most recently from my local station as their last director of education, and now the director of learning and education at Fred Rogers Productions, and I'm just so honored.
So Mallory, were you a PBS kid growing up at all?
Was a completely a PBS kid. I honestly, Kenzie, it's funny you asked that. I actually have a whole rap about all the PBS kid shows that I watched, that I have performed many times. But I definitely grew up watching Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and Sesame Street, um, Lamb Chops Play Along, all of them, and then into the years of like my little brother, Bill Nye the Science Guy, all of those shows, Magic School Bus. We were definitely a PBS Kids family.
I think we're going to need to hear the rap at some point. If you're not ready to be on the spot with it today, we're going to hold you to that we're going to need to hear the rap.
Happy to do it whenever. I have to just find it on my phone.
No, I totally get that. I was like the generation after Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, but the generation before Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. So I grew up as like a Fetch with Rough Ruffman kid. I love Fetch with Rough Ruffman. I with our archivist Emily, I go off on tangents about how much I love Fetch with Rough Ruffman. Plus the like PBS games that you could play as a kid too were like so much fun. But you know, in addition to that, and talking about your background, what inspired you to do this, and why do you do what you do?
Oh, oh, wow, that's a beautiful question. I feel like as I was walking through my career, and I didn't really expect to be here. I was honestly a happy kindergarten teacher, kinder star teacher. We were the kinder stars, doing my kindergarten teaching thing and just loving what I did. Connecting with children and families in that way in the educational space, watching children develop and grow. And when this opportunity from my station at the time pushed into my school, they had something called Connecting Literacy Nights, where you would use PBS Kids content, read a book, and then, do some kind of hands on activity with the children and families in the evenings. And so they brought me on for that program. And I got to learn how educational media can be used in the classroom and with families to, have like a home to school bridge and how powerful that could be. And so they kept me on as a trainer, as I said, and I was an educational outreach trainer for many, many years and developed more and more understanding of how you can use educational media in a way to reinforce learning goals and to support family engagement and to bring a little bit of novelty and excitement to the classroom and use technology integration in a really meaningful way, and media integration in a really meaningful way. And so, as I kind of just had this kind of organic kind of, journey into this, and so, when I made that leap from school full time to, public media part time to now, educational media full time and kind of working with schools part time, it was kind of an organic shift. I did not leave the classroom because I necessarily wanted to. I think I was kind of getting groomed to go and keep serving children in a different way and never losing my classroom chops. I still go back into classrooms whenever I can and working with students because they keep me really grounded and connected to the why of the work, which is serving the children.
I love that, the why of the work being serving the children. And it sounds like you, across your career path, have been a helper in a lot of different capacities. Um, I'm wondering what you think it means to be a helper.
Oh, to be a helper is to be a really good listener. I think when you listen and you really observe and really take in what others are doing, you can be a much better intentional helper. Um, for example, with working with children, you see children do all kinds of things, all kinds of behaviors, and sometimes some of those behaviors can be more challenging, but there's always a reason why they're doing the behavior they're doing. And if you want to help them be successful in this academic environment or whatever community facing environment, the best thing to do is to listen to them and observe what's happening and then ask questions. I noticed that you're doing this, and can you tell me why? And how I see your face is looking like this. How are you feeling? And then you can be a real organic helper. Also, just seeing needs. And again, asking how you can be most helpful. Because sometimes you see somebody who you think, oh, this is the need they have, and you want to help, you rush in and you want to help, but it might not be the help they need. So again, listening and hearing what the actual person needs, and then you can be the most, you know, empathetic and impactful helper.
Well, I love your thoughts on that idea of the intentional or organic helper. So what is something that you wish people knew about what you do?
Oh, well, I love to share from my aspect working in the learning and education department the intentionality behind every line of every show and behind everything that comes out from Fred Rogers Productions. There are child development experts that weigh in on everything that comes out from Fred Rogers Productions. And again, you asked why I can do what I do and why I love what I do. I believe in it. And I've seen proof of concept and I've seen the intentionality and care that goes into what we make. And so when we go out to, my team, when we go out and present or we're going out and sharing these resources, we can do so with confidence to know that it was child development informed, um, that thinking about the people that it's intended for was front of mind, that we have experts come in. So, if we have something with a specialty, we'll have like Daniel had the dentist episode or a dentist game. We definitely had a dental advisor on that, to make sure that there's that authenticity and that it can be the most helpful resource it can for, of course, our intended audience of the children, but also those trusted adults in their lives, those parents and caregivers um, that can see it and trust it as well. So I love that aspect of my job is sharing that Fred Rogers Productions, the people behind the programming are as kind and thoughtful and wonderful as you would hope they are.
I really, really appreciate that from a parent standpoint when I think about how much media is out there as options for children and parents and caregivers to know that the things that you produce and the things that your team produces, that is high quality. It's like you said, very intentional. Every little piece of it is so intentional and intentionally made for a specific audience, which is young children and their families, parents, caregivers, etc. That is really comforting to know that there are options like that out there and that it's not it doesn't have to be scary to think about all of the media options that are out there. So I know I personally find that very, very great to hear, and I really, really appreciate that and the work that you all do.
Thank you. I have to say, it just gives you, as Fred Rogers said, a really good feeling.
Absolutely. It definitely gives me a good feeling to know that that wonderful content is out there. So kind of leading into my next question for you, you've been talking about your why you do what you do. Do you have any particular story in mind where you had a moment where you really remembered your why?
Oh, I have so many. I've been gifted so many of those moments. So when I was teaching kindergarten, I used, educational media in my classroom a lot. And I also had a lot of, I like to say, Freddish sayings in my classroom. One was always use your good heart. We would always say, always use your good heart is equivalent to be kind. You are amazing. So like, again, I like you just the way you are, kind of feeling to that. And so I've had my kinders are all starting to graduate, or have graduated. And so I've gotten a lot of stories back. So I'll share two. Well, actually, I'll share three. They're all quick. So for the class that just graduated, I got to go to their walkthrough where they wear their caps and gowns in the elementary school. And I told you we were the Kinder Stars. And I gave them, my class, when they did that walkthrough, a little box of gifts with like little stars and little things to remind them. So I go on social media and I was tagged in a picture by one of my former parents, and it was my big, tall former student in his cap and gown on graduation day, and his little wrist was pulled up and he was pointing to his little star bracelet. He wore it across the graduation stage. So that meant a lot. I've also had a student reach out from moved way away after kindergarten. The mom found me and reached out and said, "I don't know if you remember me." Of course I do. And she said, "I just want to let you know that he won like the Good Steward Award or superlative for like his senior year." And I said, he was like, he really manifested always show your good heart. I was told her I was not surprised, and she just felt like she had to share that with me. And then the one that really motivates me, and I have even been able to tell the student that I've been able to use this story to motivate many in early childhood education, um, is that I got a email from a teacher to my Fred Rogers email last year. So this is the class that graduated. They're now going to be sophomores in college. Um, and it said, "Miss Mbalia, I am so and so. I'm the English high school teacher from wherever. And we do this project every year where the seniors have to do some things of memory and honor. And one of those things is pick someone in their life that they consider a mentor or someone who was really impactful." And she said, "I've done this for many, many years, and I've had many, many walks and many, many teachers, but never a kindergarten teacher leveraged. You must have been some kindergarten teacher, and here's what she wrote about you." And that to me was so reaffirming because what she wrote about me was what I did with my work with educational media. And not only that as a teacher, so she, of course, honored the time we had together, but she was so impacted because by the work that I did in educational outreach. And that's how I know that when you use educational media in a way that helps kids see themselves, brings that novelty and joy to the classroom, it can be your bridge for creating really impactful memories, but also building strong relationships and communication skills and reaffirming messages. And I have many, many other stories I've been very fortunate to have. But I still, in the back of my head, remember sitting in my classroom, and at the end of the day, at bus dismissal, a certain student I would put on a Super Y, or I think that's what was on, and it was an English learners, an English second language student, and I remember the eyes just glued at bus dismissal, and just talking about how they're super readers too, and with Daniel, how you have such you have such value and such uniqueness. So many stories with my own children, with Daniel and on my walks and working with, family engagement and with our content as well. I mean, Don Quixote has been my son's like jam since it came out when he was doing the baby bop at age 1. And so the educational media impact and the value of co-viewing, whether you're a parent co-viewing with your child at home or you're an educator using educational media in the classroom, conversing and talking about what's on screen, the impact is really great.
Wow, what a wonderful impact you've made on clearly so many people that you have worked with and worked for, and how wonderful it must feel to know that the impact that you made all the way back when those students were in kindergarten still lives on today. And I'm really thankful that you brought up that concept of co-viewing those shows and that educational media. I think that's something that we see often when we look at things from the Fred Rogers archive, things that Fred either implies or outright says that his show and everything around Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, it was intended to be a co-viewing experience. And he said once that his work is best done when the TV's turned off.
Yes.
And and I think that's really wonderful to hear that I mean, obviously you and everybody at Fred Rogers Productions are carrying on his legacy in countless ways, but in particular that sentiment being carried forward in the educational media that you're producing, I think that is a really wonderful thing that I feel like might go unnoticed. I think it's really important to bring that to light, that co-viewing experience and being able to talk about the educational media after it's over or while it's on or in between. So I'm really thankful that you brought that up.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. I like to say, um, from watch to wonder with our media and, viewing to doing, to that sentiment that you shared about Fred Rogers and when the TV is off. Because it's what you do with it, it's how you connect to the content that really enhances the learning. I love to also connect our content to books because our shows are stories. They are stories, and they have learning goals associated with them, and those learning goals can be reinforced, of course, with conversation, but also with other stories. Hey, in this book, this character had this challenge. Hey, do you remember that Alma had a challenge in this kind of situation? There's all kinds of things. Or do you remember Don Quixote had to persevere through something? What did you persevere through? Or, you know, Daniel has so many. There's a Daniel for everything. But like if we're gonna go, try something new. When we do something new, let's talk about what we'll do. You can use that strategy all the time, just to, use those strategy songs in context. And that's, again, using that educational media as a tool and going from, you know, viewing to application.
So this is kind of a tying back to what you said earlier about like authenticity and how helpful and that there's intentionality behind every line. As a parent, do you have a favorite like episode or song of any of the Fred Rogers production shows that is like your particular favorite?
Oh, that's very hard. I have lots of stories. Okay. So I have lots of stories. And I think that will lead to just how much I value it all. So, all four of my children, I have four beautiful children, 17, 14, 10, and 5, grew up with Daniel. And so I have Daniel stories from all of them. I remember from the 10-year-old when she was about 4 one morning, the girls I had to get all their hair done. The three oldest are girls. And we were trying to get out the door. And I was feeling a little flustered because, they're all over the place. And we're trying to get to the thing. And my 4-year-old literally looks at me and says, Mommy, when you feel so mad that you want to roar, take a deep breath and count to 4. And I was like, You're absolutely right. Um, and so she could apply the strategy then. So then there was also another Daniel moment with her when she was in pre-K, because, dropped off all the time. Never had a problem. Never had a problem. But, when you're 4, the world is vastly different every single day. There's so much new. So one morning, she decided she just was not going in class. Um, and I had no idea why. But I literally got down to her on eye level and just sang, Grown ups come back. Kid you not, she hugged me and skipped into the room. And what happened at that moment was she remembered watching Daniel with me. We talked about grown-ups come back, and she could apply it in that context. It was like literally like you could see all this processing in that quick moment of Daniel was okay, so I'll be okay. And how that worked. So, and then even recently with my son, going across the playground, he was like a new challenge. He's like, with a little help, you can be brave. With a little help, you can be brave. So a lot of that in context. But then even just seeing, I told you my son loved Don Quixote, so like dancing under the golden rainbow, dancing around the room, and anytime there's a food anything on any episode, be it Mufungo to, whatever thing, Banana Swirl, whatever is happening in any episode, we have to go make the thing, like in his mind. So there's a lot of that. So all of those joyful moments I just shared are when I can see that what they are taking and viewing on screen can be applied in real life application moments.
Mallory, you are an absolutely amazing human and helper, and I'm so happy we got to talk to you today, and anytime we get to talk to you, really. So unfortunately, we're kind of leading to the end of our conversation, and I just wanted to ask you, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners?
Um, I will just say this, as I love this quote, and it's what very famous one from Fred Rogers, and it's one that I really, really stand on. But before that, I will share a quote that also is my grounding message. And it came from my first principal. And she said, they aren't leaving the good ones at home, they're sending their absolute best. And that message to me was that no matter walk anyone's coming from, they are the absolute best that their family has to offer. And that means you are the best that your family has to offer. And if you're the best of the best, you deserve the best treatment. We need to treat each other with that kindness and respect that we all deserve, which leads to that famous quote from Fred Rogers of, there's no one in the whole world like you, and I like you just the way you are. And I love talking about that quote because it's so famous, everybody knows it, but it's so deep. It's really, there's no one in the whole world like you. You are the best that your family has to offer. You are the only one in the world like you. You have bring immense value just by being you. And I like you just the way you are. Not only do you bring great value being who you are, I accept you for that value that you bring. That's the message I want people to walk away with. If we had classroom cultures with that feeling, if we had interactions with each other with that intentionality and lens of love, that's what I hope for everyone.
What a beautiful way to end our conversation together. Thank you so much, Mallory. This has been such a joyful conversation, and it's always such a pleasure to get to work with you and talk with you. And thank you again so much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Sarah and Kenzee.
Wow, what a wonderful conversation with Mallory we just had.
I know, I always love getting to work with her and speak with her. She's absolutely amazing.
She really is, and she's doing such important work at Fred Rogers Productions, and she has done, it sounds like such important work throughout her whole career. It was really nice to hear about how she got to the position that she's in now. Her stories of being a teacher to her kinder stars and the incredible impact that she's made on her students too. That was really inspiring.
No, I really love the story that she told about her one student who graduated and had the like little star bracelet with him, even when she had him when he was very, very little. Like, just that was beautiful.
Yeah, it really was. And her talking about the impact that she has made on her students in the past made me think of when Fred encouraged people to think about someone who loved them into being during his Emmy acceptance speech in 1997 when he got up on stage and talked about all of the special people in people's lives and gave everyone 10 seconds of silence just to reflect on someone special who loved you into being and how incredible that moment was. Even just rewatching the video of him saying that and sharing that sentiment with people, I was getting a similar feeling from listening to Mallory share about her being someone who has loved people into being.
hmm Especially looking at that clip where everyone, you can tell that they're really locked in and their eyes are closed and they really are connecting with Fred and those that have inspired them in the past. You can just tell that Mallory is that type of helper as well.
Absolutely. And I'm really glad that we can use this podcast as a platform to bring those voices to light of those helpers that are loving people into being. So this is really, really a special opportunity to be able to get the inside scoop on those stories. Something that really stood out to me was um, thinking about the six fundamentals of learning and growing that we ground a lot of our work at the Fred Rogers Institute in, particularly the fundamental of the capacity to look and listen carefully. I feel like that really was relevant to a lot of what Mallory was sharing in terms of her work and her description of what it means to be a helper. As she talked about being an impactful helper means to listen first and to really know what the people you're trying to serve or the people you're trying to help, what they need.
Definitely. I think her description of what it means to be a helper also connects to what Fred Rogers Productions continues to do today, because the word authenticity came up quite a bit when she was speaking, especially about how intentional that Productions is when they're researching episodes and songs, and even just something as simple as lines, and how intentional they are about what they say to children and their caring adults, which I thought was very, very interesting. And really ties back to that idea that educational media really does serve as a bridge. So it was just absolutely amazing getting to listen to her today.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I thought it was so interesting that Mallory shared about how they have child development experts when they are developing different shows or different types of media. And I loved that she shared the specific example of there being a Daniel Tiger episode where he visits the dentist and how they had an actual dentist help them develop the show and make sure that things were accurate and approachable and really reflective of real world experiences. I think that's just such a neat aspect of what they do. And I said this while Mallory was speaking with us, but I so appreciate that from a parent standpoint, knowing that there's so much intentionality going into every single line, every single song, every single episode.
Mhm. Yeah, and even I think she said this about her son, but if not just about young children in general, that like especially for like a 4-year-old, the world is vastly new each day, and having those tiny moments of, hey, here's what it might be like to go to the dentist or the doctor or to a new place, and having that perspective for children is just really important. And I'm really excited to hear how Fred Rogers Productions does that every single day and every single episode that they create.
I think we can ask our listeners to take a moment to think about someone special who has loved you into being, whether that's a parent, a caregiver, a teacher, or any other trusted adult in your life who has helped loved you into being and make you who you are today. I'd also like to encourage our listeners to explore Fred Rogers Productions educational media, like Mallory was talking about. You can find their shows on pbskids.org and some episodes on mrrogers.org. You can also find more information about Fred Rogers Productions on fredrogers.org. So we really hope that you'll check out all of the wonderful things that they have to offer for families, children, and the trusted adults in their lives.
The Fred Rogers Institute advances the legacy of Fred Rogers by investing in the strengths of families and caring adults to support the healthy development of children. To learn more about the Fred Rogers Institute and our initiatives, visit fredrogersinstitute.org and follow the Fred Rogers Institute on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and X.